Hello and welcome to the On the Couch podcast, the podcast that gives you the view from the therapist chair. I'm your host, John Dennis, a licensed professional counselor. You're listening to OTC Episode 13, Relationship 911, Part 3. All right. Lucky episode 13. Here we go. So, as always, thank you so much for checking out the podcast. Just a quick reminder before we get going that the phone number to call in is 717-897-0577, or you can email your questions to info@parentfamilysolutions.com. We've been getting a huge response to the Relationship 911 series, so I'm glad that it's helping some people out and giving them some things that they can put into practice in their relationship. And we've been getting some great questions for the couch segment, so I'll be sure to get to those towards the end of the show. Well, as I mentioned previously, I am level 2 trained in Gottman couples counseling, which is known for John and Julie Gottman with the Gottman Institute. And it's a specific method of couples counseling. So in part 1 of the series, I talked a lot about just investing into your relationship, spending time together, the 4 horsemen. And then in part 2, we talked about love languages and 6-month check-ins. So with part 3, we're going to be getting into repair attempts. And how do you repair after you've already done the damage? So let's jump into that. The majority of couples don't go back after they've had a blow up, after they've gotten into a fight or an argument, and try to work through it. A lot of times they either will just completely avoid it and let the dust settle and then never talk about it again and pretend like it never happened. Sometimes that's because they're not very good at apologizing. They were never taught how to apologize. A lot of times it's viewed as weakness. And then in other couples, they may try to go back and talk about it, but they quickly fall into those 4 horsemen again and kind of do the same dance steps all over again. And all that emotion comes flooding back in and they just blow up all over again. And those are probably the 2 most common reactions to trying to repair after there's been, a fight or an argument, some kind of, row that they've had. So a great resource that I usually try to turn people on to is Dan Siegel. It's Siegel. He's known for, he's author of The Whole Brain Child. And his concept of flipping your lid and the hand-brain model. If you just look up the YouTube video, type in hand-brain model and Dan Siegel, it's a great representation of what happens in our brains when we hit emotional flooding, when we hit that 95 beats per minute and above. And that idea that part of your brain goes offline. I usually equate it to like airplane mode on your cell phone. You're not able to access all the apps, all the features. Same kind of thing happens with our brains when we get really angry, really upset, just really worked up at 95 beats per minute and above. A lot of times the couples that I work with, I will have them buy a pulse oximeter, or we have them in the office, or especially if anybody out there has like an iWatch or a Fitbit or something like that tracks your heart rate. So this is a really important concept to know, because they say when we flip our lid, when we hit emotional flooding and beyond, you're really supposed to wait 35, 40 minutes minimum for things to really calm down. And that's if you're actually trying to bring your heart rate back down, whether that's through relaxation techniques, through any like coping or de-stress techniques that you've learned or you practice. And most people don't wait. They jump right back in. And anytime you do that, it's just going to blow up all over again. Most times while we're apart from one another, usually what we're doing is we're just ruminating over the argument. You're thinking of, I should have said this, or, thinking up all the evidence for why you're right and the other person's wrong, and all the things you're going to hit them with when you get near them again, all the things you're going to say to prove why you're right. And that doesn't bring your heart rate back down. That actually keeps it up. So you really want to focus on bringing your heart rate back down. Then for the aftermath of an incident, it's an actual exercise in Gottman counseling called the aftermath of an incident. And it actually walks you through step by step, what do you say, what do you do after there's been a blow up. And while I'm going to outline some of the steps of this, I highly recommend, one, just checking, part 1 and part 2 of this series, but also this exercise is taught through Gottman counseling. It's done with a counselor. It's not something I would recommend people try to do without the help of a counselor. And it definitely takes practice. It is not easy to do. So with the aftermath, one, they talk about just state how you felt using I statements, not using any four horsemen. So no criticism, no defensiveness, no contempt. And I always warn the couples that I work with, when you're doing this stage, one person is supposed to be listening and the other person is supposed to be talking. And you're supposed to just stick to what I felt, not I felt this because you did this. You don't want to get into the because the other person did this, that, or the other. You really want to just stick to what you felt. And the other person, it's their job just to listen. Usually I have them take notes because that slows them down and it keeps them from interrupting. And same thing, you're really watching for your four horsemen as you're listening. Stay away from jumping in and interrupting. And you just want to take notes. Then the idea is for the listening partner to paraphrase back what they heard and ask open-ended questions about what the other person felt. And here I always stress, this is not your chance to be a lawyer. If you want to be a lawyer, go to a court somewhere. You don't want to ask questions to paint your partner into a corner and again prove why you're right and they're wrong. You're asking open-ended, neutral questions to try to understand their position better. So an example of that would be, oh, okay, you shared feeling hurt or feeling unloved. Can you pinpoint for me at what point did you feel hurt or unloved? Or, out of all the things that you listed out, which one was the most important to you on that list? And with asking questions, I often stress also, if you're going to ask the question, you better be prepared for the answer. You need to be able to handle whatever answer you're going to get because you asked the question. So the idea with that first step is share what you felt. And in Gottman counseling, they actually have a card with the exercise on it, and it lists out all the different variations of what you can say you felt. And that's actually really helpful for a lot of people because a lot of times they really struggle with telling, knowing what they felt and being able to articulate it. And then the idea is to switch and you go back and forth. So the other person gets to share what they felt. And the other partner, the first partner that was sharing what they felt, it's their turn to listen and then ask open-ended questions. And then you move on to the next section, which talks about accepting responsibility and sharing your reality. And so with that, you're talking about any things that might have factored in to what happened. So examples of that could be, I haven't really shared what's going on in my life with you. I haven't shared any of my inner world or my thoughts or my feelings. That could be, I've been really, stressed out lately with this project at work or this thing going on with my parents or, those types of things. And same kind of thing. The idea is to have one person sharing, one person listening and taking notes, and then to ask open-ended questions about that. And then you switch, and the other person becomes the talker. The first person that went with the talking becomes the listener. After you've each had a turn at that, then you move on to the next section, which is identifying the triggers for each of you. So the idea here, same thing, one person talking, one person listening. Usually the listener is taking notes. And so they're talking about what triggered them. So things like, I felt left out, I felt controlled, I felt powerless. And again, in the exercise, the Gottmans have a whole list of options to pull from. And the same thing, the person who's listening, after the talker is done, their job is to kind of summarize and then to ask open-ended questions about that and then switch so that they get their chance to talk about what triggered them. After this, the couple should be talking about understanding why the triggers are triggers. And so looking back over your life, you want to think about, is there some other incident from, childhood, past in general, other relationships, things like that, in which you got triggered in the same way, or, you had some of those same feelings, and tell that story to your partner and share with them what's important about that. And on the flip side, the listener is, again, just listening. Don't interrupt. You're just listening for feeling words and empathizing with them, trying to validate any of those feelings and those triggers. And then, again, switch. And then overall, what was your contribution to the argument, to the fight, for each of you? And then finally coming to, okay, how do we make this better next time? And if you listened last time or to part one, most couples jump straight to this. They jump straight to problem solving, solution finding. Okay, what went wrong? How do we not do it next time? And they don't go through these other steps that the Gottmans recommend in the aftermath of an incident. And I usually equate it to not fully cleaning out the wound before trying to bandage it up. And you really need to take these other steps to fully understand it, to really get why this is such a struggle, and also to not keep doing it again. And then once you get to, okay, how do we make this better next time? That is when you've fully gone through all the steps, and you'll really see just the compound interest of all of that communication, all of that listening, and the problem solving at the end. It really just changes things. I don't know how else to say it other than that it's just communication on a level that most people haven't been taught before. You're listening to OTC episode 13. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor.
Life is hard. But Parenting and Family Solutions is here to help. Our board-certified counselors are easy to talk to and offer a safe, encouraging environment to help you with your unique needs. We specialize in helping clients of all ages deal with depression, anxiety, marriage issues, screen addiction, and ADHD, just to name a few. We now have daytime and evening appointments available in Harrisburg and Lancaster and accept most major insurance plans. Visit our website to learn more at www.parentfamilysolutions.com or give us a call at 717-602-5560. Let us help you build a stronger family and a healthier you.
The next concept is the apology language. And again, we go back to Dr. Gary Chapman. He wrote a book, or co-wrote a book called The 5 Love Languages of Apology. And if you go on 5lovelanguages.com, they have an apology language quiz on there. Like I said last episode, I usually recommend the works. Just take all the quizzes that are offered on there. All of them are extremely good information. So that apology language, he talks about, same as the concept with the love languages, there isn't just one type of way to apologize. And so I'm going to unpack those 5 right now. But even just talking with your partner about what was it like growing up in your family with anger and with apologies. So often I explain, just some families, they did not apologize. It was not in their vocabulary. It was a sign of weakness. As the parent, it was this, iron-fisted Gestapo where you had to come groveling to me and you had to apologize. I didn't do anything wrong, and I'm the adult. I can do whatever the heck I like, and I don't have to apologize for anything. Or sometimes in our families, the dynamic was, Dad was always right, Mom always apologized or initiated, repairing attempts and things like that. So in no particular order, the 5 love languages of apology, they talk about expressing regret. Just, I apologize, ... expressing that, hey, I screwed up, I made a mistake, I'm sorry. They talk about accepting responsibility, which again talks about acknowledging that you made a mistake, that this was something that you did or didn't do. The third one they talk about is making restitution. So how can I make this up to you? How can I make it right? They talk about genuinely repenting. Being remorseful, helping them to understand that you regret this, and I will work to not do that again. And then requesting forgiveness, and that idea of, are you able to forgive me? Now, with this concept, I often go over a couple of things. Like I said already, a lot of individuals, a lot of families, they are not very practiced at this. A lot of these couples and communication concepts, for some people, they are so mind-blowing because they just were never taught to us. Negative communication styles were modeled to us throughout our childhood and our relationships, but nobody ever explains these concepts, sit down, talk about it, and define it, and handouts with exercises and things like that, that kind of level. So, but that idea that with an apology, people have different processing speeds, okay? Some people, they will often try to apologize right away, that sort of obligatory, my bad, and some people aren't at the same place to hear it right then. And a lot of times a blow up will happen off of that, where one person's ready to apologize, forgive, make up, move on, and the other person is not. And now there's a difference between processing speed and holding a grudge. And with holding a grudge, the catchphrase they talk about is, holding a grudge is like swallowing poison and hoping the other person's going to die from it. But there's, obviously different severities, different levels of hurt in a relationship. So some are, they're going to take quite a bit longer. The other thing is, getting very good at making an apology. It is not a sign of weakness. It is, verbal intimacy. It is a sign of strength to be able to acknowledge when you screwed up. Because newsflash, no one is 100% right all the time. Everyone has faults. Everyone has, issues and makes mistakes. There is no perfect person. There is no perfect relationship out there. And it is never a situation where, you're 100% responsible for this issue and I am 0% responsible. There's two parts to play in every interaction. And the fake apology doesn't work. The I'm sorry you feel that way is so phony and usually pisses people off so much more. Because it's like, wait, that wasn't even an apology. You're just saying, oh, well, sorry you feel that way, but tough. That doesn't do anything. And a lot of times, similar to the love languages, a lot of people have like, well, I prefer to, the other person express regret and request forgiveness. Or, sometimes there's bleed over between the different apology languages. And the other is a lot of people really struggle with especially big things like affairs and infidelity, where one partner is apologizing and they have apologized, what they felt is an adequate number of times or an adequate level of remorse. And they get very frustrated because they feel like they're done apologizing and the other person hasn't forgiven them. And they oftentimes are asking, when am I going to be forgiven? When are you going to stop raking me over the coals? When are you going to move on? And especially with affairs and infidelity, they explain it almost like PTSD, that it oftentimes takes layers. It takes the person really working through that process to come to a place where they feel like they're able to move forward. And for a lot of people, they have to go through it over and over again of asking, well, how could you do this to me? Or, no, I want to know all of the details. Where were you with this person? What did you do? What did you say? Now, with that, the person asking for those answers, I usually remind them, be careful what you ask for, because once you know, you can't unknow it. And it's not always going to bring you the level of satisfaction you thought. But that idea of, especially in an affair or infidelity, the person who was involved in the affair, they've had the entire timeline of that interaction or relationship to come to grips with it, wrap their mind around it, and know what's going on. The person that is, usually the, quote unquote, the victim in this relationship with the affair, they did not have that same amount of time to adjust to it and to wrap their brain around it. So it's emotional, relational whiplash when they find out that there has been an affair. And that's why they explain that it's this PTSD type of reaction where they're trying to come to grips with it. So with those apology languages, the key is making eye contact with the person. Be fully present. Make it clear beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are paying full attention to your partner. And use I statements. Don't use you statements. Don't give backhanded compliments or I apologize for this, but I only did this because blah, 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 blah. That's similar to, you think of like battered wife where it's, well, I only get this crazy because you say this or you do that. That's not an apology. So again, if you know your love language, you know your apology language, and you know your partner's love language and apology language, use that to, explain why you feel sorry, what you did, that, how you made the mistake. And I think it's, goes without saying, you could use a little bit of each of these. I mean, not everybody needs restitution and making it right again. Some people, they, especially if it's over and over again, they get tired of hearing like, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to change. You'll see, I'm going to do this, that, or the other. And some people, they get kind of sick of hearing that okay, well, you keep doing this. But a lot of people need to know, okay, you're at least accepting responsibility for it, and you understand how this hurt me, how this impacted me, and asking for forgiveness is also huge. Again, everybody has their own apology languages, but really talking through and even just talking about how difficult it is to apologize. It's very humbling. You are making yourself extremely vulnerable with your partner. And again, that's not weakness. That's opportunity for growth and strength. But even, like I said, just talking about what's hard about this and what has been your past with regards to apologizing. All right, so just to recap, we talked about the aftermath of an incident and apology languages off of Dr. Gary Chapman's 5lovelanguages.com and his 5 Love Languages for Apology book. Also, I referenced Dan Siegel and the hand-brain model video that you can find on YouTube that explains about flipping your lid. So I'll make sure to pop all those into the show notes so you guys can find them nice and easy. And that about wraps up the Relationship 911 series. So I really hope that you guys have found this information helpful, that you're able to put something out of this, 1 or 2 of these things into practice in your relationships. It's great information, honestly, for romantic relationships, definitely, obviously, but also just for family relationships, friends, a lot of different things you can use this information for. So I'll end with a couple of questions for our Questions for the Couch segment. We have one here from Chris in Newark, Delaware, and he says, my girlfriend and I have horrible, horrible fights. What is it that we're doing wrong? So, Chris, going off of the limited information, most times I would say people aren't aware of that emotional flooding, and they don't take a timeout when they should. At 95 beats per minute, anywhere near that, you should be taking an automatic timeout. Just call a timeout and get away from one another. Most couples need to define timeout, how they call it, and learn to respect that for one another and practice that. And then you're probably coming back too quickly. You're not waiting the 35 to 40 minutes or more to really de-escalate and calm down. And during that time, a lot of times I talk with people about, write some of the stuff down, write some of your thoughts down, but really taking that time to de-escalate before coming back to the table and trying to hash the whole thing out. I hope that helps. Good luck in your future fights. Our second question comes from Stacy in Marysville, Pennsylvania, and she asks, what are some creative ways to express love languages? So, Stacy, this is a great question, and it's really important to just, think outside the box, get creative with it. You're usually not going to go wrong, and even if you do, a lot of times it can be hilarious and break the ice. It can be something that you guys will remember and talk about, years down the road. But I was talking with one couple tonight about, it's pretty easy to buy postcards. They're not really expensive. You can usually find them in a lot of different places, and just getting one, writing a quick note, especially if you or your partner travels a lot for work. I describe it almost like a little love time bomb, that kind of goes off later. You may have already gotten home and they get it in the mail, and it's just, hey, I was thinking of you. This was a place that we've always wanted to go, or I just couldn't stop thinking about you, and how much I wanted to come home to you during my business trip, or things like that. In today's world, tech makes things very easy. So it's so easy, text messaging, everybody does text messaging just about. And sometimes that can be a really bad thing. I always stress, if you're going to fight, don't fight through text message. It never goes well. But things like a voice message, through text. It's easy to call that up and create a voice message really quickly. Same thing with a video message. You can shoot a video on your phone really quickly and send that to your partner, just letting them know, hey, just wanted to let you know how much I love you, how much I'm thinking of you, and tell the kids I love them and I miss them, or things like that. Post-it notes. You think of, the things that you likely did when you were dating, especially in young love. We did a lot of more creative things when we didn't have money, but we had a lot of time. And now it's reversed. Now we don't have a lot of time, and we have usually more money, hopefully. But getting back to some of those things, putting Post-it notes for your partner to find them, or little things like that can go a long ways. It doesn't have to be this, crazy, extravagant promposal, flash mob type of situation. It can be. If you're able to pull that off, that'd be awesome. Please send me any video of that you do, and I will post that on our social media. But also, just little things here and there can mean so much to that other person. And it has so much compound interest to it. So I would really encourage you to try some of those out. And again, great question. Thanks for sending that in. If you guys want to send me pictures or videos of, you guys putting your love languages into action, in terms of, things that you've done to let your spouse or your partner know how much you care about them and love them. I will, throw a hashtag PFS on the couch on that, and I will post that on our social media. All right. Well, that wraps up episode 13. Next, we'll have OTC episode 14 with David Beard. He is an assistant principal in Pennsylvania, and he and I get to talk about the power of brainwashing in a positive way, and the importance of not just what you say, but how you say it. Take care. If you liked what you've heard on the podcast, please be sure to subscribe and review wherever you're catching this podcast at. You can check out any links and resources on our detailed show notes or other episodes that have been archived at www.parentfamilysolutions.com/podcast. If you want to catch up on what Parenting and Family Solutions is doing, be sure to follow us on any of your favorite social media apps. This is your host, John Dennis, saying good night. The author and host of this podcast is not engaged in a therapeutic relationship with the listener and cannot give counseling advice without a confidential appointment. Listeners should be sure to consult with a licensed therapist in their area or seek emergency medical attention if they are experiencing psychological difficulty. A special thanks to the Topsy Turvies for the show theme song. Their song, Like a Living Dead, can be found at topsyturvies.bandcamp.com. The bump interview track was the song 1973 by Bruno E. The author and host of this podcast is John Dennis. Special thanks to producer and editor Trevor Groff.